coaching calls are more for accountability. A lot of it's your expertise for one hand. It's like hearing the right things from the right person is powerful. And then the accountability of like, now that you invest in it, it's, you have to do it.
Like, success leaves clues. I always like to look back on like some of those videos and be like, oh yeah, what was it that was different, right? Niching down too much is like such a concern, because it's like, oh, then we might not be able to attract a large enough of a audience to like actually make any money. But I've found honestly that doesn't really tend to play out that way.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another powerful episode of the Creative Journal podcast, where we equip you with insights in marketing, creativity, and design to become a better version of your professional self. My name is Andy, founder of MMG Design, and today's episode is going to be a live coaching call with none other than past guest Bruno Pozzo. And this one, we're going to be diving deep into YouTube strategy. And you'll know for future reference what a YouTube consultant looks like to help you identify your target audience, what you should be posting, knowing how to cater to that audience, and also some actionable strategies on how to make it sustainable. If you've been looking to implement some kind of YouTube or long form video into your content strategy or your marketing budget, this is a must listen for you. And the value in this call is just insane. And it also speaks to the value of investing in the knowledge of others to shortcut your learning process. Bruno taught me a ton, and in just the 2 months since this call, we've had some measurable results from YouTube just from getting started. After uploading weekly for the past 2 months, we've had 3 videos cross 100 views, and our subscriber base has gone up 30. Obviously, these are not crazy insane results, but as a small business owner looking to target other marketing leaders and business owners in Columbus, Ohio, this is a great start, and I've seen a couple people at networking events that have referenced these videos, and it's gotten me more bullish on it than ever. If you guys are curious about Bruno or want to learn more about Pozzo production, all his links will be in the description. And without further ado, you're listening to entry number 64 of the Creative Journal podcast, a live coaching call with Bruno Pozzo. Let's dive on in.
I was going to recommend starting with really nailing down who the audience is.
Yep, absolutely. And this was the first thing I wanted to start with too. So my ideal client right now for the business is, and we phrase it as like, I don't want to weed anybody out, because a lot of it is saying yes to everything right now.
Yeah.
But like home run client is like innovative companies, innovative small to medium sized businesses, usually 11 to 50 employees that have some kind of a marketing staff already. And they're either looking to hire for a fractional role in design or marketing, or they're looking to implement new marketing strategies. So like trying out a new platform, or need a new website, or they're curious about how the website, or they need different strategies on how the website is the centerpiece in their marketing. And it's basically, I want to brand myself kind of as a fractional marketing consultant that specializes in design. So when it comes to content, I don't know exactly how much time someone like that, like a marketing manager or a CMO, spends on what they're watching on YouTube, or if they're even watching marketing stuff on YouTube. And if they are, it's probably someone who's younger, someone who's interested in trying like new tools. So I have like a ton of like content ideas and some inspirations and stuff, but that's really who the ideal client is someone who's looking for like a marketing consultant, or our main service is web design, keeping that in mind at the same time. So someone has like a company, has a strong marketing role at a company, and they want to integrate their website more into their marketing, and they need marketing strategies that go, and they're looking for help on how to do that, probably for themselves, or they're looking to hire that out. So
yeah. And it sounds like it doesn't necessarily have to be like locally sourced clients, right? Like you can work with anyone, given time zones like align and stuff. But yeah.
Yeah, and that was another thing I had in the notes, was like a lot of we're very active in like Chamber of Commerce, and that's where a lot of like our clients are now. So it's like, how much in the verbiage and the script of the videos do you say like because you want the video to match the person perfectly. So if I were to say like SEO for Columbus business owners, or how to rank your, Columbus business online, or best strategies for XYZ. You don't want to I don't want to like weed anybody out. But at the same time, it's like because a lot of our networking is in person. So it would make it a lot easier to say like, okay, I'm an event, recommend this video to this person. So it's like, I don't want to weed anyone out by basing off location, but at the same time, not discriminating, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And you know what? This is something that I used to like struggle with too. It's like niching down too much is like such a concern, because it's like, oh, then we might not be, able to attract a large enough of a audience to like actually make any money. But I found
Mhm.
honestly that that doesn't really tend to play out that way unless you go like, at least I haven't seen a niche get so small where that happens. And what actually is surprising is that even though, like you said, like maybe you specialize, let's say we did decide to specialize on like web design in Ohio or whatever, some sort of locale, even if
Mhm.
someone from like Florida happened upon you and like really liked your stuff, it's not like you're gonna join the call or they'll call you and you'll be like, oh, sorry, I only work with Ohio. It's still like
Right.
you'll still be able to attract people to you, but they might just even be asking you like, hey, would you be interested in doing it for this or for this, tangential market? And usually I just say yes. Like for example, that actually happened to me like last week on a call. Was I was with a gentleman who was asking for like, it was so weird. It was basically like social media like clips. And I was telling him like I'd normally do like personal branding and stuff, and I was kind of talking to him about that. And he was mentioning that
Mhm.
he had found me that way, like through LinkedIn, but he wanted me for
Mhm.
something else. And I was like, sure, I can offer that if you want it, That's just something that
Mhm.
sometimes happens as you like develop that library of content and like reach more people. So I wouldn't worry
Yeah.
too much. Did you want to start local, you think? Or does that really not matter? Then I would say you could probably just go away with a wider net, to be honest, since your
Mhm.
service doesn't require you to be like physically present at some location, right?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. And I've also seen the same thing sort of too. And that's why, and I mean, we've talked about this before, but a lot of it is just like general marketing. So when you
Hmm.
position yourself as one thing, you're probably going to get inquiries for other things, but
Yeah.
you want the one thing that you push the most to be the main thing, you know?
Hmm.
So it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the foot in the door and then gain trust, know, like, and trust. And they want you to solve, some of their other problems in adjacent fields. So that's why, like, I want web design to be very aware too of like making content, and we kind of talk about this too, but
Mhm.
making content that speaks to someone else like you and not like the people you want to work with. So like web design tutorials, I think
Mhm.
those are great for like displaying expertise, but that marketing manager is not looking for how to, add the custom element into the webflow editor or something like that, because they're not building their own webflow site. And that's what we specialize in. Is webflow is not a traditional DIY platform. So marketing managers aren't usually the ones that are in the weeds building their sites. They're not looking for tutorials, but it
Mhm.
might be something. And Liam kind of started putting together 3 minutes, something that you could just record on a loom where it's not a ton of overhead. You make a good thumbnail for it, solves a very specific problem. You could do the research. You don't find another good tutorial like it. It's like, okay, maybe we can just throw one of those out there and then put that on a playlist to where you have some of that credibility aspect, and it's
Mhm.
not, taking the whole, like majority of your time in production. So that's something I've kind of toyed with too. But I'd be curious to get your feedback on that. I'm gonna get my notebook.
Yeah, no worries. I have found, and especially when it comes to like ranking YouTube videos, so I think I've mentioned to you like that's sort of the strategy I'm most comfortable with. I've been experimenting and trying to get more into like the recommended and suggested, because that's where like YouTube pushes it out to much a wider audience, right? Versus like when your search it's only going to really show up when someone types something in. So then you're tied to like search volume and whether a topic or something is trendy and things like that. But I think it's a decent place to start, because I have found the more specific you get, sometimes the better, Like I think I
Mm-hmm.
mentioned to you, one of the videos I have on my page is like a camera tutorial. And one of them, and it was like, there's 3 tutorials I made. One was like how to set up the video, how to set up the audio, and then how to set up like a specific video setting, and they all played into each other. And it was nice because you mentioned even later talking about tactics when it comes to like call to actions at the end of a video. I just
Yeah.
feed into the next step, right? Like after you solved one of their very specific problems, they're like, hey, so now that you know how you can use Webflow to get more leads for your business using this widget or whatever it might be in the video, here's my tutorial on how you can actually get more traffic to your website using this social media strategy, something like that. And so you're all
Yeah.
you're
Okay.
so that's part. I know that's a little bit later. We were going to discuss it, but that is something where it's like
Mm-hmm.
the YouTube strategies that what you want the video that you're currently creating to lead into another one. So that's why I like
Mm-hmm.
the problem solving way. Like I said, like for the example of the camera, I started with like, what are the best video settings? And I was thinking to myself, all right, so then what's the next logical conclusion is like, someone's probably going to want to know what's the best like microphone settings. So that was the next video I pointed to them. I was like, hey, if you really like this video, now you're probably asking yourself, hey, how do I set up my microphone to work with the best settings with my camera? Here, check out this video here where I go over the audio settings. So that's something to keep in mind with the video strategies, is that like if you can keep that like content flywheel and thinking of like what's the next thing after they've solved this problem, or you've answered this question in the video, what's the next question they have in their mind, and then point them to that. And it's weird because once you get into that groove, like content ideas just keep coming. It's like so weird because then you just start to see like it's the customer journey in that way. And so that's, like I said, that was a little more of like a later thing. But going back to the ideal client, it sounds like we're both kind of targeting similar people. It's like just like medium sized, maybe larger, obviously that would be goals or whatever, but like medium to small sized businesses who want to sort of dabble into digital marketing. And specifically your solution is web design. And you said you do a little bit of social media then?
Yeah, it's more like social media strategy. So like identifying where your target audience is and then creating like a marketing strategy that finds them on that platform and creates content that speaks to them and leads to conversion. But I really like what you said about like solving adjacent problems. So like Hormozy says, you want to create something that solves a problem but then presents a new one.
Yes,
in like a diabolical way, but it just creates awareness of what the next step is. So I love that. And and this is another thing I want to hit on this before I forget is like calls to action. So there's a ton of different calls to action. We're building like a lead magnet like workflow, because what I'm seeing, and me and Liam talked about this today, was like there's a ton of times like when I'm making content, we have the podcast, we have LinkedIn, very active, Instagram, Twitter. Like sometimes like I'm making content and I'm like, okay, that would be a really good place to plug like a free resource, like a checklist. We have the data breeding database. We're making like an AI tools database for marketing. It's like this would be like a really good time to plug that, so we can get like a landing page up like super fast and add that to like the mailing list. But when it comes to calls to action, I think the best approach would be like organically throughout the video and not so much like at the end. Like there's this one guy, and I'll show you some of the profiles that I was like scanning, like adjacent sort of like what the goals are. But his call to action is like at the end of like right after the introduction, he's like, it's so reliable, it's so repeatable. It's like, this guy's a marketing strategist, but he says like, okay, now I gotta do the housekeeping. My name is Bailey. I'm an independent marketing strategist in like Boise, Idaho, or whatever. These are the videos I make, and it's like very direct. Like I am doing this so that if you're a marketing manager or someone in need of marketing services, definitely get on a call with me. The link will be in the description below. So it's like very direct. It was like, I'm making this video for my business and hoping to get conversions. Whereas I like the call to action of being another video that solves a problem because it's a lot less direct. And I also like the idea of making it a lead magnet. So that feels less direct too, because it gets them on the mailing list and not so much being as like brunt and like, like leaning in for the kiss. Like, okay, give me a call. The link's in the description below. Like that feels a little bit brash to me. And I even asked him, I said, it's like, dude, like how many like calls do you get booked? Because he's been on YouTube for 3 or 4 years. He has like I think like 500 or 600 subscribers, and he has a couple viral videos, not like viral videos, but some that get like a couple thousand views here and there. And he goes, yeah, it's happened 2 or 3 times. I was like, he's been on YouTube for 5 years. So it's like conversion rate, and you say in every single video too. It doesn't sound like that's the net for having to make something that's so obvious. Like if you say that like right in the description, like right after the introduction every single time, like to me it's just like, okay, like I'm not really looking to do that, and it's wait for that. So it's like I don't want to be that direct with it, but what's kind of your whole take on like calls to action?
I agree with you. I think it's better to ask towards the end because they've already given some value, right? I don't like asking at the beginning too much. It's like they've clicked on this video, they've probably watched, whatever, the 2 skippable ads, and then all of a sudden there's like another ad, you know what I mean? I feel like I think I would say definitely wait on it. At least that's always been my instinct. It's like maybe in the middle or towards the end, one of the two, just because, there's going to be a steeper drop off as you get closer to the end of the video. There's less people there, like whatever it is, 10 to 20%. So maybe towards the middle is like a good, like classic mid-roll thing. And I do see people do like the strategy that you mentioned, which is just like they have like this pre-recorded thing, or maybe he records it every time. But anyway, it's like an obvious script of like, hey, if you want to check out this thing or this service, or you want to work with me directly. I actually don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because sometimes people just don't know. And it's just good to remind to be like, hey, if you're enjoying this, or it's like, hey, I would word it differently, because my instinct is like, hey, if you're enjoying like this, like for example, if it was a tutorial, hey, this is a great tutorial. Sorry, I'm butchering it right now, but it's like something closer to, if you're enjoying this tutorial, but you don't really, and you're realizing that maybe this is something you don't want to do, you can hit me up and we can talk about ways we can work together so that we can get your website up and running and just whatever. Something like that. I would just word it differently because you're right. Sometimes it's a little too direct. It's still direct, but it just shows like, hey, like if you were the person that is like, fuck, oh, this sounds like a lot of work. I don't want to do that. Just call me up and we can work on it. I can see how we can work together. Something like that. That's usually something like the language I like.
Yeah, another thing I've seen too is I've kind of picked up on it because I do watch like a lot of YouTube. I'm like, okay, this is kind of the stuff I want to take away. But it's like you kind of blend the call to action and like your introduction. I mean, Hormozy is huge on like make content for people that don't know about you, you know?
Yeah.
And actually, did you know a way to like record this call? Because I'm learning a lot right now.
Yeah, I have Firefly's app note taker. It's like an AI note taker. So it'll send a summary. Yeah, it's like a complete transcript and everything. So
okay, does it like record the like an MP3 of the audio?
It does. I don't know. I never tried downloading it though, but I know it does because I could play it back. So
okay. Because I'm just thinking like this would make a really good podcast. But anyway, like that I would listen to. But that's wrong. But anyway, he like phrasing your like call to action. Ooh, I'm big. Like phrases the call to action like in your introduction. So it's like you obviously like lead with the hook, then you go straight into my name's Andy Milligan. I'm a independent marketing consultant or whatever my title is. I should know that. But in Columbus, Ohio, I help marketing managers and innovative companies get online with their website, create, and then like go straight into your pitch. It's like, okay, they can kind of self-identify how they can help me and who I'm looking for in just like the introduction. It's not like, you know, you're not being as blunt and direct with it. You're just like introducing yourself. And that's like Hormozy's thing is like always introduce yourself, always, you know, make content for people that don't know about you. And also too, like leading with proof. So like instead of saying like I help, saying that I have helped or I've gotten these results for these people, and this is why you should listen to me, but also not being that direct too. Something kind of like in those ranges. This is all stuff to play with too, but
yeah,
go ahead.
I know what you're talking about. He calls it like whatever the proof promise plan. I really like that video too. When he was switching his strategy from like the wider net to like the more business niche net, and it does work. It was interesting because I almost like was resistant to the introduction part, but it's true. Like if you're trying to cast a wider net and you're trying to reach people that don't know you, you should have some sort of like introduction. I would say like test with like keeping it brief, and you know, I think definitely like the shorter, the snappier. Like if you can get that script down, it's almost like a pitch, right? Like when you go to the Chamber of Commerce, you really want to have that thing nailed down, and like you can iterate on it as you go. But at some point, once you have that now down that it's working, then you have it. I know Ali Abdal does that too, and he's been doing that for like years. He always introduced himself like for like, it felt like 15, 20 seconds. But yeah, just like a quickie thing. And if you can tie it into that point of like the proof, I think is good, because it's true. It's like, why should they listen to you? Hey, I'm gonna be teaching you like how to set up your web page to sell more widgets. My name's Andy, and actually I've done this for over 500 companies here, whatever the number is, 500 companies here in Ohio, and actually scaled them from 5,000 to 10,000 using this exact strategy. You know what I mean? Like something like that, where like you said, you're sort of introducing yourself and adding the pitch with the proof. And you're right. I think that's probably like the smartest way to do it. The closest I've done to that is like, I just introduced myself as like a full-time filmmaker for the last 3 years. That's just like proof of like, hey, like I don't do this as a hobby. It's just something I do full-time. That's like the little intro I do now. But yeah, exactly. It's like try to like weave it in depending on like the contents of the video, I think is like the smartest way.
Yeah, I think and how deliberate do you get with like scripting that in? Because there's like, as we go through and talk about this, there's a ton of little like nuance things that I will get better. Like I have with podcasting, what I have, you know, at Chambers of Commerce meetings and networking events, stuff like that. But how deliberate are you with scripting to where you don't miss like these nuances, like the calls to action to subscribe or these small details like in the middle? Because I know when it comes to editing, it's like a real pain in the ass to make sure you include everything. And that's just like with the podcast. More than that, it's like, okay, I have like a 30-second sort of ad read from the lead magnets. So I put that in. I've experimented with different places and just like remembering like all these checkbox tasks too. So how deliberate do you get with scripting? And then like placing these things in there?
I think scripting for just the important parts I do. So like the hook, 100%. I try to like word for word it. Like I'll workshop it for like a day or, not the whole day, but like I'll workshop it for a few hours. Like I write like 3 different hooks usually using that framework. Funny enough, from Hormozy, I write it down on my scripts as proof, promise, plan. I fill in those in. I'm like, try to like do 3 iterations. And then whichever one like sounds the best. I guess I wish I had a more like objective measure of like which one is the best, unfortunately. But then yeah, I just try to memorize it and then just do the take when I can. And then in terms of, so for the important details, which I would say is the hook, you said the pitch, and then the call to action at the end or in the middle, whatever, or you can do both. But any of the call to actions, I would definitely script them. And then for everything else, I think bullet points is fine, so just to keep you on track, like you said, just so you don't forget anything. I think, I end up scripting almost word for word everything. But then when it comes to recording, I don't do the whole thing word for word. It just helps like brain dump. And then I'll re-bullet point it. And then it's like, oh yeah, that's what I meant by like show them or like show this menu setting first or whatever the bullet points are. It's like, attend chamber meetings or set up your web page this way for this things. I would say for the meat of it, you can probably bullet point, but definitely for intro and outro and then call to actions, I would script as much as I can and then just like rehearse it. Unfortunately, I still mess up on that too, like, take a few tries on camera, but I think it's just better that way because you want that to be like nailed pretty well.
Right. Yeah. And that's even what we're talking about with like short form was like, I said, like, Liam, like take 90% of your time spent on like the first 5 seconds. And then like after that, it's kind of all gravy. Just like make sure it's edited well and, you don't have any like Sam starts and like pauses in the middle or anything like that, which I give him a lot of trash for, but I do it all the time. Dude, editing takes so long. And that's another thing is like production time and kind of making this something that, because if it's not fun, if I'm not enjoying it, it's the same thing with the podcast. Like if you frame it as something that you're starting like this big mountain and it becomes a chore, it's not going to be sustainable. You're not going to want to do it. Yeah. So I'm thinking like minimum viable product to start to, just test and see what like performs well. I'm not attached to views or results at all, but probably just start with like 3 to 5 minute videos. And then also working that into the content strategy. So I have a lot I want to talk about, and I'm kind of trying to navigate this naturally. But right now, the content strategy is informed by the podcast. So alternate 1 week on with a podcast guest, 1 week on solo, and I'll script out that episode. And that's like my performance, the solo episodes are. And I've gotten better at recording it. Sometimes I don't record it. But another thing too is like, how is it's obviously easier to make a YouTube video that's just the podcast, but then at the same time, it's not, there's a lot of restriction in that. It's a lot less, makes it easier and more streamlined because it's like, okay, just publish a YouTube video on the same day of the podcast and just edit it. But there's not a lot of value in there. And I'm not going to be talking about something super specific that's meant for YouTube. And you can't optimize for 2 platforms at the same time. So the podcast is the main thing that's going to keep going no matter what. So I think when it comes to the content strategy, how do you kind of work that in? Do you recommend maybe some weeks or having a backlog of maybe, or even not even putting the podcast on YouTube, the solo ones, because I think those could be better for just clips and for example, you know who Jay Class is?
Yeah, I know him.
Yeah. So actually, I'm gonna get him on the podcast probably.
That'd be cool.
I know. Crazy story, real quick. He lives in Columbus, Ohio, like in Grove City, like 20 minutes away from me. And I went to the CSCA event in Columbus. It was like the worst networking event ever. I was like, I walked in there, there's 5 people there. I drove an hour to get there. I was like, oh my God.
Oh.
You gotta be kidding me. But I talked to this one lady and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna talk to a couple people and leave. But anyway, she went to high school and college with Jay Klaus. And I started like fanboying over her and then over him to her. She's like, oh man, yeah, you have a podcast too? And then we checked it out and I was like, oh, I could totally introduce you in an email. I was like, yeah, you can do that. But anyway, so that's going to be a really good one. Hopefully he's getting ready to have a kid, unfortunately, stupid timing, but I'm so down the road. But anyway, what he does is what I did for like, and my best, and I don't do a deep dive into analytics. Something else I want to talk to you about too is just
Yeah.
the minimum viable product of like assessing the effectiveness of a video, because conversions are pretty obvious, but you don't know like what video it came from. You don't know whether to assess. And I'm a newbie at this, so do I assess watch time? Do I assess views or engagement or comments? So I will talk about that later. But another thing is like what he does is he makes like a video out of the interview. So he makes it like very highly edited. So if it's a podcast, it's like an hour and a half long. What he'll do is he'll make like a 15-minute video of an interview, and he'll frame it around a promise in the video or a promise in the podcast, and the hook will lead to that. And then he'll do a short intro of the podcast guest. You're like, oh, so like when you click on it, you don't actually know it's a podcast, but you can, and because usually like most, now that I think about it, most videos are like that. They're podcasts on YouTube. But then like once you see the timestamp, you see it's like an hour and a half long. I'm like, oh, okay, that's probably a podcast. So that's part of it. But my most highest engagement video, and it's because he shared it, was from Josh Hall, and it was in that format. So it was like storytelling the whole way. And this shit took like a day and a half to edit. I was like, I'm never spending as much time on a YouTube video or podcast again, which I will now. But it was like storytelling. So it was what he would do was just very highly edited introduction, and then like storytelling throughout. I would butt back in at certain points, I would go straight from question to highly edited answer, and then butt back in with a story, anecdote, and then a call to action. And it's like, I'm really proud of that episode. It was like really good, like engagement throughout. And that's like, and I even knew, I was like, the watch time is going to be really good because like a video, and it was like 20 minutes long. So you fluff out a lot of the bullshit in a podcast, but at the same time, it's that time investment too of making it. But dude, like that's, as the podcast kind of becomes the main thing, then I think when YouTube starts to become a higher ROI thing, then maybe I can toy with the idea of making like highly produced videos like that. But for now, I think the checkbox of, doing the introduction, introducing the guest, the call to action. I mean, I think a lot. I don't have very good like retention now on the podcast at all on YouTube. And I think because it's packaged very well, like I do the research on the title and the thumbnails, so it gets a click, but it's like from like right after the end, like I just know right away. It's like that's not people aren't going on YouTube to sit down and watch a back and forth interview podcast. So I think it's still, do you even think it's worth uploading anymore as we focus more on like a content strategy? Is it, or I know you just talked a while. So what are some of the impacts for you, what I just said?
And you were saying that one of the videos that you did really well when you like did like a lot more editing, you said? Is that what you were saying?
Josh. Yeah, it's a Josh Hall video. So it's from like 6 months ago.
Oh, I see.
But it doesn't have a ton of views, but it's the watch time on it is like the entire thing, which is
really?
Most of them.
Yeah, I bet. Oh, I see. Yeah, I was just curious, like, yeah, because like, success leaves clues. I always like to like look back on like some of those videos and be like, oh yeah, what was it that was different, right? And you were saying it might have been like some of the way you like framed it and organized it to sort of tell the story a little more.
Yeah, well, I think I knew it's like a night and day difference of how long I spent into it. Like I never usually add B-roll or cut back in the middle or frame it that well, or even like add any like graphics or edits or text even. So it's a pretty night and day difference as far as what went into it, which I know is it's an easy thing to track. It's just like, okay, just do the checkbox task, but dude, it takes so long. And especially like right now when like the ROI from the highest ROI thing I can do right now is literal sales and networking and outreach. So I would like to get to a point where my day looks like content more and less like sales. I think that's the dream for most people, is that like I'm building this thing and I'm learning to delegate tasks and I'm learning how to do this stuff, and I want my day to look like less calls, less sales. I mean, because I really like making content, and I want that to be what markets the business. And it's very non-traditional for like, I think even today, like when content is so, like everyone knows content is important. I think it's very non-traditional. Like I'm the only web design agency that like I feel like my content is so much, I don't want to say better, but so much more time goes into it, so much more thought. Like most of the agencies in Columbus, most of the freelancers in Columbus, they're not posting like vlog content like I do every week. They're not posting very like thoughtful videos, and not many of them have podcasts. And that's what, I mean, I want that to be my like main marketing asset, is LinkedIn and YouTube eventually, and just content where I have like a creative say in it and I'm creating and not cold calling, So
Yeah.
I think that's one of the big underlying goals of the whole thing, because I want it to be fun too. Like that's the whole reason I started the podcast, and that has different reasons too, is also to learn. But I mean, YouTube is just like the opportunity is too good as far as what you can do, and plus I kind of have this thing where if I haven't gotten good at something, I want to get good at it. And I've gotten a lot better with, speaking and elaborating my words.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of less scary to me now to be able to do that. So I kind of want to, with that in mind too, like obviously the meta goal is, or the short-term goal is to create revenue for the business and trends and conversion from videos,
Mhm.
target the right people, put the marketing behind it. But the long-term goal is to make it something that accomplishes that goal so that I can do it more and be more creative with it and make that look like more of my day. So
Yeah, to answer your question about whether I think it's worth it for you to do the podcast, I think it is. It's definitely a lot of work though, like you said, because like you have to find guests and then you have to like you said editing. Even if we try to keep the editing minimal, it still can be like I don't know, just a chunk of time because it's like an hour-long episode. And then I would just recommend really if you wanted to keep it light, the only sort of editing you really should do is probably like cut some of the breaks between the speakers if such a thing happens. And then the intro, like you said, I like as you mentioned, Jay Klaus, like I know Sean Cannell from Think Media, like whenever they do a podcast, there's always like the 30-second like teaser of the episode. That's like the only thing I would really like recommend if you're gonna do the podcast, is that you probably should start doing that so you can like sort of hook like it's like a second opportunity to hook someone after they've clicked the thumbnail. And then I know you mentioned that we're talking about like the target demographic. You would just have to change your guests, I would say. It would have to be like digital marketers or something that's like tangential to, web design and like which is what you are, I guess. It's digital marketing. It's a form of digital marketing. I'm technically a digital marketer. I'm just specialized in video, but
right. That's what I was gonna say is like people
yeah.
like you, like people. I mean, people in like adjacent.
Yeah, it still works.
Yeah, and I'm kind of like in that situation where it's like, okay, I don't want to make content for me, but at the same time, it's like I'm not making content for someone like me, but we have like adjacent like interests. Because when I think about it, like I'm not someone that goes on YouTube and is looking for one specific thing when I'm, unless it's like I'm need a tutorial or anything like that. So like I'm making videos for people interested in marketing, but I myself am also interested in marketing. So it's kind of teasing out the difference. Like, okay, this is a personal, like a creative rabbit hole I'm going down versus like, okay, I can see how someone else can watch this video and apply it for themselves.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's worth it. But like you said, it's just a lot because you have to like it's a lot of coordinating, and so sometimes it's just a judgment call on that end. I would say just leave the editing very minimal. Just do the intro, and then maybe like those CTA you can just plug in the middle and the end, like a pre-recorded thing, or you can record it after the interview maybe. And then like if you look at Jay Klaus's strategy, at least like in terms of if you just look at title and thumbnail, like he's done a really good job of like he never really mentions the person's name unless it's someone really famous. But even then, I've noticed he just says like, Harvard psychiatrist gives secret to getting millions of views. You know what I mean? Like it's all about like framing the content, especially with podcasts. I think it's easy to like want to just lean on like, oh, I don't know, like what the content of some of the podcasts are, but it's just like how to be a better CMO in higher ed or something like that. It's like kind of stale, dry. It gets the point across. But with YouTube, like you said, and especially I think with video podcasts, the opportunity isn't really in like search based. It's actually in like the algorithm pushing you, which is the whole suggested recommended. And that's where you want to take advantage of those more like headline strategies where it's like talking about benefits or talking about like results or maybe even pain points that people can, remove. And I think Jay Klaus is probably like the ideal channel to look at because I know this channel is like fairly new too. And he's done just a really good job of like actually implementing this strategy, which is just like the whole, getting interesting people to talk about things and then just framing it, packaging it with a good title and thumbnail that gets people who may not even realize they wanted that content to watch it, right? And so I think it's worth it, but you're right. It just depends on like how much time it's sapping from you because it is tough. I do know. That's why I'm always like impressed by podcasts because I think the hardest part is finding the guests, right? And then like coordinating all this time to like
Dude, it's
produce it.
yeah, it is, but like I've actually so like the one time in life like where I think I probably did things right, where I was like okay, because I remember it's like so clear as day. It's like I was listening to the Tim Ferriss episode with Kevin Rose, and he was
Mm-hmm.
talking about like, what's your advice for starting a podcast? And he's like, the goal isn't to make 10 highly produced episodes and then hate your wife and quit like 90% of podcasts do. The
Mm-hmm.
goal isn't to make 10 and fizzle out. The goal is to make a podcast. The goal isn't to have made a podcast. The goal is to have a podcast. So it's like I kind
Mm-hmm.
of knew beforehand, like this is a part of my life. So I was never that attached. It was always like, okay, Tuesday, 8 a.m. publish. Wasn't attached to the editing quality in the beginning, and it's still not the best, but it's getting better. Like I'm a better speaker. I have equipment. I have a mic, and we'll talk like briefly about equipment too because I had that on my notes. But I just knew from the beginning. I was like, okay, how do I streamline this so that I'm feeling like shit and I don't want to do it?
Mm-hmm.
It's not gonna be that hard. So I always have like guests kind of lined up. Like I try and
Nice.
have like 5 or 6 in the can, and it's pretty natural to pitch a guest. So I have like a bunch of
Mm-hmm.
scripts that I can just copy paste. It's usually on LinkedIn because I spend a lot of time on there anyway. If I see
Mm-hmm.
someone I want, I just send them a message with the show notes, and I spent a ton of time making the podcast show page like look really good. It has the header video, it has
Yeah.
the call to action, a really punchy description, has all the past show notes of past guests, it has all their photos from the thumbnails. So it's like, wow, this looks like professional, like way more
Mm-hmm.
professional than it actually is. And then sharing clips of it once a week too helps that. So it's like people, and I have it like in my bio, so people know that I have a podcast. So it's like it's gotten, and editing too. Like if it's just an audio podcast, like if it's an interview podcast, I can edit the audio in 30 minutes. Like it's just
Mm-hmm.
I always keep notes on the time. Says okay, just click this out. I record an intro. I have the intro animation and music all dialed in. I have the outro music all dialed in. I have the video, so I can edit it and like I can make it really streamlined. It's just like I don't know like if it fits into, because the podcast isn't going to go away. It's just whether it fits in, if the video part of it is something that's worth reframing as a marketing asset. Because I feel like a lot of that I like the idea of not putting a ton of time into it, but putting the time into maybe the intro and then the packaging, so that customer would say like, oh, okay, like I might tune into this, but what I'm not going to do is go in and make every every video like highly produced and catchy and do the storytelling like I did for that one.
Mm-hmm.
But so it's going to be mostly like take the footage or format it to the screen and then spend the other 90% of the time packaging it and then saying, okay, that,
Yeah.
and then if someone wants to watch it, then they can, but I'm not going to expect conversion or thousands of views from, a long form podcast, because that's just not what YouTube's meant for, I don't think so.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's definitely worth your time. Like you said, if you can sort of like minimize all those little hurdles, and like I would really keep it simple in terms of like the video editing. Like I said, like just chop up like just the little gaps and then just the intro, and that's kind of it. Like, and then like you said, most of the effort should really just be in the packaging, like the title, thumbnail, and then you've got a
Mhm.
nice thing. And then definitely like if you send it to those people like you interview, definitely have them like share it and things like that, or try to encourage that, because that helps too, because then now you're leveraging their network as well.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that was the whole point with the podcast. It's like my most viral piece of content is from the interview I did with the Ohio State guy. And like LinkedIn, it's so easy because all you do is make a piece of content about someone, tag them in it. And if they
Yeah.
do any type of engagement with it, it gets out to their whole network. And if people are the spotlight, that's why I design the thumbnails the way I do, is like this person is the spotlight. And they're like, man, that looks really good. That looks
Mm-hmm.
professional. It's like, I want to share that. So I want to get better at, like right now for the podcast, it's just been people in, I haven't done like the standard like strategic research, like asking for introductions. I have before, but I haven't done the strategic research on the guests, or like, okay, I want to milk their audience and create a piece of content that they will share, that if someone is watching this, or like, man, like that's someone I want to work with. So a lot of that looks like people here locally, because I'm kind of like, my whole meta goal is like, and this can sound however it sounds, but it's to create visibility. Like that's been my thing
Yeah.
with content. It's like I've seen it like I've gone to a couple events, networking events, chambers of commerce meetings, where people have seen me on, and they're like, oh, like, and it's so like, it's weird every time it happens, but it's kind of cool. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, like you're the blue and orange guy on LinkedIn. So it's like that part of it too. Like that's not something that you can measure. It doesn't make me money. It doesn't convert to clients, but I feel like someone is more likely to work with, like, I think like it kind of creates like credibility for me, and not
No.
really, but like, yeah, it's like, because that's kind of the whole goal with content in the beginning. And then as I get consistent with it and, get better at the platforms, it's, how do I make this reach the result that I actually want rather than just getting my face out there. So that's kind of another thing too.
And that's, I wouldn't sell that like recognizability and reach short, like that is a big part of like the buying journey. I don't know how familiar you are with, I forget, I think it's Google that had this study, but it's like the 7-11-4 rule. It's this basic study that they did about what was the customer journey between like when someone searched something versus when they bought it. And so what Google found was that typically they needed about 7 hours of interaction. That could be through content. That's like sort of the easy thing. And then on 11 touch points. So like they saw them on, when they searched them, like one YouTube video came up and then one website came up, then a website banner, right? And then four touch points or 4 platforms, they say. So like, one was on Instagram, one was on YouTube, one was on LinkedIn. And then all those things combined led to the sale. So I think like the fact that you're creating like the podcast, like all these touch points and all these LinkedIn posts, it is gonna like benefit you. Like it's just adding to those numbers, like those more interactions. Interactions could also be like you commenting on people's posts. I would also try to take advantage of that. I don't do that enough, but that was something that I was doing for a while on LinkedIn. And it's surprising how strong of a strategy that is, because LinkedIn, like, you know how it is with the notifications. It's so weird. I get notifications for like people commenting, people liking, people like sharing. I don't know. It's so weird. I feel like I get so many LinkedIn notifications that I'm like, this isn't me doing anything. Like, why am I getting notified about this? It's not even my posts, It's like, it's a post I interacted with.
Oh my God, dude. I could talk about LinkedIn for days, dude. Like, I love it so much. And
me too, man.
God, yeah. I want to make that part of my content too. So
you should. That could be
could
be like a talking point, is that like, because like you said, you're sort of attracting other digital like marketing minded people, even if like, I know you wanted to go for like the bigger businesses, but even then, like the fact that you could show up and like connect with people and like you can, like you said, teach other people who are at your level, or that you can help, or businesses that you can help, like those bigger dogs will eventually notice. And that's something that like when they search, or when something comes up, when they do have a need and they need a recommendation, or like, they go on LinkedIn or whatever, however they need to search, you'll be one of the options that pops up, just because you've already established this library of like content and like, people that you've interacted with, and also the goodwill. Like you mentioned, like you're sharing other people. That's why I like podcasts. There's like a halo effect that happens with that, is that people start associating like, like you with, like you said, that you're just kind of like generating goodwill and people recognize you, and you're someone who's like clearly interested in self-development and like digital marketing and taking advantage of like the technology we have now. That all adds up, man. Like I think it's definitely worth it. It's just like you said, like about really like optimizing it and making it as easy as possible. Like really, like if there's a way, like I don't know what platform you use, but some of them, like you're able to like sort of basically have the YouTube video recorder where it'll switch the cams and stuff. And then you just have to do the intro thing and then the packaging. And I would say like that would probably be your best bet, just so you don't have to spend so much time.
Yeah. I thought about, and that's where we're going to get to the tools part of it. Like what can make it the lowest friction sort of thing too. Descript, I know that's the one that has me the most excited, just because of the editing. Like it does the auto flip thing. So like I wouldn't even have to take it into Premiere, which would be
nice.
I would like for the intro video part of it. So that, that's a moot point now. But that, like just for the text-based editing, is like it has the timestamps too. So if I know like when, I fucked up or they did, like I can just go back in and like just text cut it out, and it's seamless. Like custom views, camera switching, that part of it. Another thing too, and do you know if I share my screen so I can just share my notes?
Or do I have to do something for you to do that?
Actually, I don't know. Let me get back on that.
Because it should be on the bottom. I see it on the bottom. It's the present now next to the hands. You should be good then. Hopefully, if it says something.
Okay. Oh, good.
Inception.
So this was what, are you seeing Notion? Okay. So, oh my God, that one. But okay, these are kind of like, this is the aim of like what I want to do right now. So like quick wins. And then these are the overall goals. Like I said, you just kind of hit on that, was creating a library of stuff that I want to, that I can like share out to people. And I'm getting better at doing that with the podcast, but it is hard. Like the same thing with the lead magnets. Like if I see someone talking about books or marketing tools, I'm just like, hey, got this database, have these checklists of books, have this, that, and just saying like, happy to give this to you because that's another goodwill builder. I'll also get the emails too. Equipment, we'll talk about that. We kind of talk about how much I should niche because I was going to ask about the Ohio question. And that's another consideration too. So like the chamber is going to be sponsoring the podcast. So, and I just heard back from them about it today, and they like, this is going to be, they want the branding to be a little bit different. But that like that's very target. Like this is going out to their newsletter, to their all their social media profiles. They're making blog posts that is going to be a really strong backlink. So
Nice.
the visibility there is very concentrated. So like my ad reads for that are going to be very like Columbus business, like work with a Columbus business, and then sharing case studies for like how we helped like a local business. So that's another part of it too. But I don't want to like have these very segmented. I don't want people to like scroll through the video and like, okay, he's saying like this is like he's targeting two different people with these different videos and like loses uniformity. That's another piece of it too, but that's just like kind of a consideration. Content ideas, sharing stuff for like sharing case studies,
Yep.
DIY versions of what I already do. So like how to use a DIY builder, and then framing our services as a premium solution to them.
Exactly.
And then like presenting myself as the next, like creating content that positions me as the next step to solve the problem. We kind of talked about that. Vlogs too. I want to like add some personality, like some maybe one vlog, like one every 5 or 6 videos is a vlog content. So like I will still package it, and then you can kind of work this into to any videos, it's like some kind of vlog based content, but like framing the promise of the video, but then also having some vlog content inside of it to create that personality. Design software, less on the tutorials, kind of like the short tutorial videos like we talked about. Local business owner lessons, podcasting for business growth, because I have that credibility now. And that's a topic I actually love, like, because that kind of scratches both itches of like, okay, like podcasting, it doesn't have to just be a hobby, it can be a marketing asset for your business.
Yeah.
Like case studies of past projects, AI tools, and just kind of the trends in marketing. And also like I'm okay with going super niche on something that is general in topic. So like like a very specific use case of an AI tool, but that would appeal to marketing. So it's very clear that it's a marketing AI tool, but I'm going very in depth on this one specific one to try and hit the chance that someone might see it. That is that. These are some profiles that I kind of came across. I was doing this earlier today, but this is a guy I was talking about that's very salesy with his approach. But he frames himself pretty well as a professional, and he does website tutorials, content. I can actually just look him up so you can see his real profile. But he does like tutorials. He used to have a podcast, not anymore, but he's like some of his stuff, Webflow stuff. He kind of plays on the virality aspect with stuff like that too. And he's gotten better. It used to be shit at YouTube. Like his videos aren't very well edited or anything like that, but it gets visibility and he says he gets some conversion from it. So yeah, there's that part of it. He's one of them. Another one is digital. This guy's more the agency route, and he's a lot more mainstream. This guy's been around a while, but he's like web design specifically more so. So design, marketing, no code. He has an agency, so I'm aware his target audience is different than mine. He's trying to market to people like me. I mean, he's creating website specific content for there's a community, as a school community of people that are trying to build a web design agency. But he has that credibility. So, and he also has a pretty diverse, I think that's very consistent. And I just like his sort of approach to it, professional, confident. And he kind of frames his big use case is like websites are marketing. So that's kind of the stance I want to take too. So websites as a marketing asset. So working that into there, showing like the process of what makes effective websites, but also not doing it in a tutorial sense, just kind of working that into the language and copy.
Yeah.
Other ones were this guy. Okay, so this is the guy I'm structuring my business off of, and me and Liam have talked about this, but I just released his podcast today on YouTube. I talked to this guy, but his is different. He has a kind of a different approach to it as well. So he owns the marketing agency, which is called LaunchKit, but he has his personal thing on the side, and the whole business is built off of him. So he has like 6 employees that are all 20 somethings, and they're like a branding studio / marketing agency. So like if you look at some of his older content, he used to be bigger on YouTube, and that's how he got a lot of his leads and built his runway. But he was talking about like how he used Webflow, camera tutorials, even Webflow SEO, like specific stuff relating to marketing. Yeah. But what's biggest about him is his vlogs. So this is all vlog content. Like he uploads 2 or 3 vlogs a week, and they're very highly, and that's like, they're just straight up vlogs. So it's like building a marketing agency day, whatever. And that's kind of his theme and format, is what people have come to expect. But I mean, I even interviewed him. Like, it's the way he structured his business. Like, you can look at his website, like similar services, not so much on the content side of things, because they do more like photography and like content like creation for businesses. So it's basically a subscription service for a content package.
Yeah.
But they do websites and SEO and marketing for small businesses. And I think I'm targeting someone a little bit different. They're very, like, if you even look at their website, it's more homey, it's more down to earth. They're really trying to speak to a small business owner. So it's digital marketing that connects businesses to their community. So it's like they're really trying to work with small businesses. Their services are like, these are ours. So brand development, web design, SEO, and then also marketing consultancy is the third one, which they don't really offer. But this is what I want the business to look like. I love his content approach. He told me, and this is kind of the cold open to the interview, but he has he built up by himself before he started hiring. He had 188 clients in a CRM, and 70 of all 70 of the highest LTC or LTV to CAC, the thing you talk about, but all of his highest value clients came from organic social. So like from his vlogs, from one of these YouTube videos, and then he's just starting to get into like SEO and the more organic search approach. So it's more of his longer term play. But he says everything I've gone so far has come because of the vlogs or just some kind of either short form or long form content on YouTube. So like that's my goal. Like he's in a position now where he delegates a lot of stuff to his team on the fulfillment side, and he spends like 50 to 60, 75% of his time just making content. So like he's technically like the sales staff of everything. He manages the finances and stuff like that. But a lot of his time is spent like editing vlogs and capturing footage of his team and then just hanging out with his team and stuff like that. So this is it's like the North Star for what I'm trying to build. I'm not exactly the same from a suite of services, and I'm trying to target like a higher ticket client, because they have very budget services for like small businesses managing their social media and stuff like that. So content wise, this guy is kind of like what I'm looking for. But I want to get more onto the technical side of things too, because I'm aware that a high profile marketing agent or marketing manager isn't going to spend time watching kind of this homey, touchy-feely vlog content stuff. So I want to mix it in there, but not lean on that too much. Another one was, so this guy's straight up tutorial, and he doesn't have a ton of subscribers, but he's just a nerd on Webflow stuff. So his videos are shit editing. It's literally just a Loom video, but some of them he just knows, and I talked to this guy too, but he just knows what to make that people are looking for. And he does these case study videos that are like 30 minutes long, and just like showcasing. That's something I want to do too, is just like every time I have a big project, just doing a case study video where I talk through the whole thing, and then that can go up as a live YouTube video, but then also like create clips from it. It's like going to the parts of the website, telling why they're effective. And it's also, if you package it right, it can just be like the scroll wheel of the website, like, oh, this is cool to look at. So those are really the ones that the content that I consume, or not that I consume, because I don't watch these. Like I don't binge, except for maybe this guy, because I don't really binge watch these. I just, these are things that came to mind as things like, okay, like that is what gets them, that is what helps them drive their business. And this guy's like actually really successful, even though his content is, he's not great at content, but ironically, his content is still what gets him his leads, because he doesn't focus on packaging. He just focuses on straight up like, and he's really funny too. So like, I'll look him up, but he's just like, and like you can just tell like this guy knows what he's talking about. But like you see his videos like 18 views, 40 views, like stuff like this. But it's stuff that like he has some viral videos solving like a super specific problem, because he was like right at time. But he's also, all these people, very consistent with shorts, and that's what I need to get better at, because I make short form video. I haven't gotten the process in place for getting everything unified. And that's something me and Liam are working on, is getting platform diversity, because I know YouTube shorts are really big for getting people into your form content. So we talk forever. I don't want to keep you all night, but those are just some of the inspirations. Another thing too is, I guess that's about it, but those are some of the quick win stuff I want to do right now. The people that I'm watching and that are getting the results that I want, maybe not in the same delivery method, but those are kind of the top of mind thing. So I know I just talked for a while, but is there anything you can kind of unpack from that, whether it's from the inspirations? Like, is there any of these that you would say do it right? Or, I mean, I guess they all kind of do it right because it works for them. But what would you kind of pick apart from these people? I know you haven't watched any of their content either, but what's kind of your impression glance?
Yeah, honestly, I would just focus on long form. If you can get shorts, sure. But I think in the beginning, like, we're all in different seasons of our careers and lives. It might just be more worth it to just focus on like pumping out the actual like decent long form content than trying to get the shorts. But if you're like making shorts already, because I know you kind of do that for like LinkedIn and stuff, I don't see why you couldn't just repackage it for YouTube, add the title and thumbnail and some meta description. And you can even make that, like, I guess technically the post like text could be the description of the short, because technically sometimes people read that too. But yeah, like I would say, I personally would say focus on long form. But if you can handle doing both, go for it. The more power to you. I just wouldn't, like, if it came to a point where it was like unmanageable, then definitely just stick with the long form. And then in terms of the strategy, I like the sort of like content pillars you were talking about. Something I would even add to that is, like you mentioned, like the case studies. You could even like review, or I guess that's the word, like review or roast like a bigger company. I wouldn't roast like a small, like a local company or anything, but like if you find, like, let's say, for example, shitty example because it wouldn't be true, but like if Apple had a web page that was ass or something, you can make a video like talking about like why Apple's new web page sucks, or whatever it is. So that's like really good content because it does two things. One, it leverages a popular IP or recognizable IP. And then two, you're sort of like providing, like a little bit of a thought leadership, right? You're showing that you know your shit. Like, hey, like the reason this sucks or the reason this doesn't work is because of X, Y, Z, whatever. You can break it down from there. So yeah, that's something that's worth considering, because it's sort of like the case studies. And then you can also flip that. I find, unfortunately, like just human psychology, it's like we're naturally tied, or we naturally notice like negatives and things like that more often. So that's why I take the negative angle. But you can also do the positive, right? Like why Apple websites always look that way. I don't know, something like that, where it's sort of getting a little bit intrigue. But then now you're praising it, right? Now you're showing like, hey, like this is the reason why, or like, oh shit, like, oh my God, like something that a normal commoner wouldn't see. Be like, oh shoot, like that's a little trick they did. Like, here, let me break it down for you. Like, hey, check this out. Like this little widget, when you scroll down, had this animation. That was really smart because X, Y, and Z, whatever you want to say. But I think that could also be a nice like little pillar that you can even post on LinkedIn, right? Like you're sort of like talking and like sharing some thought leadership, because I think that's something that will separate you from just like a tutorial channel or anything like that. It's just like actually sharing like your thinking behind your business and your
and I want to butt in real quick because that's a great point. And when it comes to like Liam went through all my posts for like the past 3 months or quarter on LinkedIn and like what performed the best and so forth, and like content that gets reshared. I know something about YouTube, and it was I tried one that was a website review of Ohio tech startups websites reviews, and 2 of the 3 companies I reviewed reshared it to their company page. But it was only because it was positive. And the owner, the agency owner that reached out to that designed the best website sent me a message. I didn't really do a project or anything, but she was just complimentary. It looks like you do good work. I look forward to following you, stuff like that. I actually want to pull up that video because it's kind of I wonder like how well something that would do on you, because I'm very aware like that's more entertainment than it is like practical value. So maybe like working that in like maybe once a month or something like that, rather than, because I want people to like look forward to a video from me, like, oh, what's he gonna post now? So like, because I even think about the people I look forward to videos the most, like I rarely am I disappointed. Like, oh, like I never like the people that I look forward to video from every week. I'm not like, I'm definitely not gonna watch that. It's always something. It's like I could definitely get value out of that. So, and maybe that's just good marketing on packaging on their end, but I want to be someone that doesn't make something that's like totally out of field.
Yeah. Hello? I lost you for half a sec. But yeah, man. Well, I would like to keep going, but we're about to finish here. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, I know. I milked you for all your worth, yeah.
No, you're worried. No worries. But if you want to, like, I mean, I guess we have the note taker, but we can put a pin on it for now, and I can text you too. But yeah, I hope that was like at least somewhat useful for you right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's, and I'm aware of like the coaching calls are more for accountability than they are for like, it's not like to discredit you, but a lot of it's your expertise for one hand. It's like hearing the right things from the right person is powerful. And then the accountability of like, now that you invest in it, you know, you have to do it